Alright, this is the second video about the Holocaust. These are now more pogroms. Not a program, but a pogrom, which is an organized persecution of a race. Okay? And so here you go with pogroms. Now, pogroms against the Jews have been from the dawn of time, and a lot of people liken it all the way back to Christ's crucifixion and at the hands of the Romans, saying that the Jews were responsible for this, and they had killed the Savior, and other people just didn't necessarily like him. But regardless, the Jews and also the Roma, the Gypsies, were two big things, and they're still kind of just like very much in Europe. Okay, so the plan that I've mentioned before with Goebbels, remember Greenspon killing the German diplomat, and he's going to turn it. The stormtroopers are going to go, and in a period known as Kristallnacht, or Night of the Broken Glass, they're going to break into these Jewish shops, smash the windows, so that when they wake up in the morning, everyone's going to think their neighbors were upset about this and went and smashed these windows because the Jews are so horrible, etc. Now, at Kristallnacht, they killed at least a lot of people. They injured many others. For the meantime, Jews were arrested on a massive scale and transported to these Nazi concentration camps. 30,000 Jews were sent to Buchenwald, Dachau, and Sachsenhausen. Hundreds died within the first week of arrival. So, he's going to mass produce them to go to these concentration camps, and it's also going to convince people to give up their neighbors and say, hey, there's a Jew hiding over here. Now, a lot of people will not believe in the Holocaust, and one of the main reasons about that is because some of the people actually turn these people over, and they don't want to feel like they were responsible for that. But we'll cover that in class. We'll talk about that. Now, some famous ones, and it's kind of a question of why him and not her. Albert Einstein was allowed to immigrate to the United States, whereas Otto Frank and his family was not. So why did this happen? Einstein was a scientist, and he understood nuclear fission, and we're actually going to put him to work on a top-secret project, which I'll talk about later on. Whereas Otto Frank was a common worker, so due to the Quota Acts, he was not allowed to come here, so Otto Frank had to go to the Netherlands, and ultimately we know the story of his daughter Anne Frank and the very famous diary she kept while in hiding. Now, there comes the story in the United States of the MS St. Louis. Now, the MS St. Louis was a passenger boat. It had docked in Poland, and it picked up a ton of Polish Jews. It came to Cuba with the intention of making it to the United States. However, Cuba being a protectorate, they're still under the same laws. They reached there, and they were sent around, as you can see, back to Poland because they weren't allowed to get off the boat. And this is kind of crazy, but many of those people on the MS St. Louis did end up in one concentration camp or another, or a death camp or a ghetto. They were persecuted in some way. So is the United States responsible for this? Did they have an intention for it? I don't think so. And I'm not trying to excuse any blame if there is any blame there, but I don't think that was the full intention. The U.S. had passed Quota Acts in the 1920s. Remember, we talked about the 3% coming in. And so the quota from Poland had already been met, plain and simple. We did not fully understand about the concentration camps, and I don't think we would sign anybody's death warrant like that and send them over. However, it did happen. It was a consequence. So maybe something to understand if we put a quota on people, what's going to happen. Now, after the Jews and everything were basically kicked out of their homes, a lot of them weren't necessarily sent straight to the concentration camp. There was a transient community that they called a ghetto. Now, this is not a ghetto where poor, impoverished people live. This was a walled-in city, more or less, okay? It was a containment area. However, it was very transient. People were always coming in, and people were always getting shipped out. If you were getting shipped out of a ghetto, however, you were either going to a concentration camp or later on to a death camp. So that's not a good thing. So it was part of the whole process of removing the Jews from their homes and sending them to work. Now, the concentration camps, mainly they are working, they are building up this Nazi war machine, etc. Now, the most infamous of the concentration camps was a camp called Buchenwald. All right, and so they were basically sent there. These were mainly men who were working. Women and children met a far more insidious fate than this. Now, why are the Nazis taking all this Jewish property and land? It is called Lebensraum, and you can see Hitler reaching out there. Lebensraum basically means living space. Again, he feels the Aryans should have all these things. And so, in short, if you were blonde-haired, blue-eyed, you were basically put in a house with your new wife or kids and put into this Jewish household that had all this wealth and money. It was basically given to you so that you could enjoy and have many children, and basically the superior race would kind of move on, whereas the Jews were to be contained and worked, and then later on in the third video we're about to see here how they were ultimately decided that they should be eliminated off.